The NBA Draft. The moment teenagers get their entire life dreams made, as well as the night franchises decide the direction of their future. But not everyone is a diehard NBA fan that knows who the projected 29th pick is, and that's fine, but with the NBA diversifying and growing so many new stars, it might be daunting to try and get into the sport. Well, I'm here to make things easier for you, so stick around, because it's looking to be one of the greatest draft classes ever. The NBA Draft is different to other drafts in sports. Unlike 7 rounds and 259 picks like the NFL, the NBA Draft is split into only 2 rounds of 30 picks, meaning only 60 players out of thousands on the night will be drafted. Now, the first 14 picks in the draft are the lottery picks. The order of these picks is decided by the 14 teams that missed the playoffs in the prior season, with the 3 teams with the worst record in the NBA having the best odds to get the number 1 pick, all having a 14% chance. The odds then decrease the further down the lottery we go. For those who don't know, the San Antonio Spurs won the lottery this year, meaning they will have the first pick. More on that later though.
The San Antonio Spurs.
There's a few rules for the draft as well. In order to be eligible to be picked, a player has to be at least 1 year removed from high school, as well as having to be at least 19 years old during the year of said draft. With the format now explained, let's go back in time and do some basic history. The very first NBA draft was all the way back in 1947. Things were very different back then. I mean, I don't even recognize any of these names. Who? The draft as we know it as today didn't really come around until 1989. Up until that point, drafts were ridiculously long. In the 60s, teams would just keep picking until there were literally no prospects left. There were 21 rounds in the 60s, and even up until 1985, there were 10 rounds in every draft. This led to some very interesting selections, such as in 1984, where the Hawks selected a newborn baby, and the Sixers selected a pharmacist and friend of the owner, a 47-year-old named Norman Horvitz. Another odd occurrence in drafts gone by were that teams used to draft professional athletes in other sports to try and convince them to come play basketball. In fact, current NBA GM Danny Ainge was actually part of an MLB baseball team before he was drafted by the Boston Celtics. He would go on to have a 17-year-long NBA career, winning 2 championships. Now, as I alluded to before, the first NBA draft with just 2 rounds and 60 picks was in 1989. Historically not a great draft, with the best player being 6-time All-Star Shawn Kemp. And that brings us on to a very, very important point. Not all drafts are created equal. Some can change the course of NBA history, and others like 2000 don't even produce a single superstar. Well, the draft this year looks like it's going to be one of the best ever. But before we look at this year's draft, let's go back and remind ourselves of the greatest draft classes in history. 1984. Now, when you have Michael Jeffrey Jordan in a draft class, it's already one of the best ever. But people often forget Jordan wasn't the first pick. In fact, that honor belongs to Hakeem Olajuwon. The Rockets selected Hakeem, and surprisingly, passing on Jordan didn't end that badly for them. Hakeem would go on to lead the Rockets to 2 championships, and is undoubtedly a top 10 player ever. But the draft doesn't end there. The 1984 draft also included legendary players such as Charles Barkley at the 5th overall pick, and John Stockton at the 16th overall pick, and even All-Stars such as Alvin Robertson at the 7th pick, Otis Thorpe at 9, and Kevin Willis at 11. So in total, the 1984 draft class had 53 All-Star selections, 8 Finals MVPs, and 7 regular season MVPs. Safe to say it's one of the greatest. 1996. Now, this probably is the greatest. It's astonishing how good this draft class really is. At number 1, the 76ers selected Hall of Famer Allen Iverson. That's just the beginning though. Hall of Famer Ray Allen was selected at 5, the late great Kobe Bryant was picked at 13, 2-time MVP Steve Nash was picked at 15, but this draft still included more great players, such as All-Star Shareef Abdul-Rahim at the 3rd pick, Stephon Marbury at 4, All-Star Antoine Walker at 6, and then elite players Peja Stojakovic, Jermaine O'Neal, and Ilgauskas, taking the 1996 draft total to 64 All-Star selections, 4 regular season MVPs, and 3 Finals MVPs. And if that wasn't enough, although undrafted, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year and NBA champion Ben Wallace was technically a part of the 96 draft class, as he was signed as a rookie by the Detroit Pistons. 2003, easily the most famous draft class in history. If you're watching this video, you know this draft. And number 1 overall, the greatest draft prospect ever, and arguably the greatest player ever, LeBron James was selected by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Future Hall of Famers and all-time icons of the game, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh were selected at picks 3, 4, and 5, with all-star Chris Kaman being selected at 6. Definitely the best first 6 picks in draft history, minus a certain player. The draft still included other great players beyond this point as well. All-stars David West, Josh Howard, and Mo Williams were also in this draft, along with one of the greatest shooters in NBA history, Kyle Korver, taking the 2003 draft total to a whopping 10 NBA championships, 4 regular season MVPs, 49 All-Star selections, and undoubtedly the most culturally significant draft class in history. Talking about the best draft prospect ever in LeBron James, this year's number 1 overall pick certainly rivals that moniker. Victor Wembanyama is a 7'4" freak of nature. Imagine Yao Ming with the handles of Kyrie Irving, and you begin to get a bit of an idea of how ridiculous of a prospect he really is. He's a great 3-point shooter as well as a fantastic rim protector. There's really not much else to say. He's gonna be the first overall pick. Everyone knows it. Spurs fans have already started celebrating it. His one concern is his health. That's pretty much it. Players above 7 foot have historically had very tricky injury histories. Humans just aren't meant to be that tall. Hopefully he stays healthy though, because if he does, he's gonna do seriously scary things in the NBA. At number 2, there's a bit of an argument, but in my opinion, it's another consensus pick. Scoot Henderson is a generational athlete. Compared to Westbrook, he's an extremely fast, elite point guard that can finish with the best of them at the rim. His one concern is if he will be able to develop a consistent jump shot in the league, hence the Westbrook comparison. But the Charlotte Hornets have the 2nd overall pick, and it's going to be interesting to see if they end up drafting Scoot, as they already have a great young point guard in LaMelo Ball. It would be very, very silly to pass up on Scoot Henderson in my opinion though. Now this is where the draft gets very interesting. Picks 3 through 8 are arguably completely interchangeable, showing how deep this draft really seems to be. The guy most people think will be picked at 3 by the Trailblazers is Brandon Miller. Miller is an incredible 3-point shooter, shooting nearly 40% standing at 6'9". He's a natural scorer of the ball. Despite his off-the-court issues, his game is great, kind of similar to a Paul George, just not with nearly as tight of a handle, and that's his main weakness really, but that's easily worked on. He's a great prospect, and many people see him going at 2. Now in my opinion, I just don't think he has the upside of a Scoot Henderson. Now the Thompson twins. Amen and Ausar Thompson are both incredibly athletic prospects. By the way, to have twin brothers be elite draft prospects is so insane. Amen is the better of the two in my opinion. Standing at 6'7", he can play as a 1, 2, or a 3. He's a great passer and an elite defender and slasher. Now, his jump shot is a major concern. Unlike Scoot, it's really bad. He shot just 25% from 3, and he might need to change his shot completely. The lack of a shot doesn't make him much of a threat in the half court. He's still got a tremendous upside though. Ausar is the better defender of the two. Also standing at 6'7", he's just a natural on the defensive end, averaging 2 steals a game. He's also a great rebounder. However, he isn't a natural scorer in the slightest. He really struggles to create anything offensively when he can't use his athleticism, which usually leads to major problems in the NBA, a league full of ultra athletes. They've both got massive potential though, especially if they can work on their shot. Moving on to Cam Whitmore. Whitmore is the perfect wing for today's NBA. Good shooter, great finisher, ton of finesse, quick, and with a 40-inch vertical. He could easily play a Mikal Bridges-esque role for a contender in the NBA. I'm not sure he has the upside of a superstar, but he's a great prospect nonetheless. He doesn't really have any glaring weaknesses in his game. He's just a little rough around the edges, which is expected as one of the younger players in the draft. He's a great prospect though. Now, Jarris Walker is probably my favorite prospect in this year's draft. Standing at 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan, he has the potential to be a very good versatile power forward in today's league. He's got great mobility and athleticism, he's effortless off the ground, it doesn't take a lot of time to load up when finishing, rebounding, or blocking shot. He's got great hands for his size, scores well in ISO and out of ISO, and he can pick and roll or pick and pop. However, he does lack in lateral quickness a little, and he probably should improve his 3-point shot, but even that, there's still a decent shot there as he hit 31% of his threes in the NIBC. I really think he's going to be great. And last but not least, Anthony Black. Anthony Black is a 6'7" guard, a common theme in this year's draft actually, who has a great body control and understanding over changes in pace and direction. He has a great frame that he could easily add muscle to. He loves playing in the pick and roll, and he seems seems to have great court vision. Again though, he struggles from behind the arc, shooting just 20% in his freshman season in college, as well as averaging the most turnovers per game in the entire NCAA. He's very young though, turning 19 just a few months ago. I've also seen some concern over his attitude and lack of toughness. He looks to be a great prospect though, especially at that size. These are just my favorite prospects though. Let me know your favorite prospects. It's going to be an amazing draft. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.